Hello and welcome to this edition of World at War. My name is Mohammed Saleh. The fall of Bashar al-Assad in Syria has triggered a wave of deadly airstrikes and bombings by the United States, Turkey and the State of Israel. On the one hand, there are scenes of thousands of Syrians coming out to celebrate the ouster of Bashar al-Assad. And on the other, the Israeli army is now camping just about 25 kilometers to the outskirts of Damascus. The United States and Turkey have also carried out repeated airstrikes as they claim to protect their own respective interests. When foreign powers meddle in the affairs of a nation, it is never a good sign. But when foreign powers trigger the fall of a ruling dispensation, even if it be that of Bashar al-Assad, and facilitate the takeover of Damascus by a new leader, in this case Abu Muhammad al-Julani, then you can be certain that what is unfolding in Syria at the moment is not a revolution led by the Syrian people. Make no mistake about this, Abu Muhammad al-Julani is a former right-hand man of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the dreaded leader of the ISIS terror network. In 2013, Abu Muhammad al-Julani had broken ranks with al-Baghdadi to swear allegiance to al-Zawahiri, the then leader of the Al-Qaeda terror network. And to this day, the American CIA has a $10 million bounty on his head. So what future awaits Syria under the leadership of Julani, who even now is a sanctioned terrorist by the United States and the United Nations? For all of his faults, Bashar al-Assad had remained staunchly secular. Despite the corruption and nepotism, the rights of Christians, Druze, Shias, Sunnis, the Alawites and other minorities had by and large remained protected. But now there is a question mark on the rights of minorities. The possibility of the balkanization of Syria is now very real. So the question, of course, is this: with the fall of Damascus, who gains, how much, and equally importantly, who loses? Our next report gets you the details.
The unthinkable has happened in Syria. Thousands of Syrians are out on the streets. The Syrian flag of independence is being unfurled proudly. There is a genuine expectation that Syria, which for decades has been mired in war and sanctions, can look towards a new dawn. The Assad dynasty, which had firmly entrenched itself in Damascus since 1971, has dissolved in thin air, literally without a fight. At the historic Grand Umayyad Mosque, a new caretaker prime minister has announced the birth of a nation.
Victory and the liberation of the land is not just about breaking chains or raising flags. It is the birth of a nation, the restoration of dignity, and the writing of history.
A new history is indeed being written in Syria, but no one can expect what shape this new history will take. The caretaker prime minister has been propped up by Abu Muhammad al-Julani, but the question is, who has propped up Abu Muhammad al-Julani? The CIA still has a $10 million bounty on his head, but the American media is doing its very best to try and mainstream him by doing sit-down interviews with him and by running headlines such as this, describing Abu Muhammad al-Julani as Syria's new blazer-wearing revolutionary. But this blazer-wearing revolutionary and his rebel outfit, the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, is backed, funded and armed by Turkey, a NATO ally of the United States. Israel, that hasn't missed a beat in this war, began bombing Syria even as the rebels marched into Damascus unopposed. This video put out by the Israeli military will give you a glimpse of the scale of the bombardment that Israel has resorted to since the ouster of Assad. More than 400 sites across Syria are said to have been bombed and Syria's military infrastructure dismantled. Every Syrian fighter jet and helicopter has been bombed to smithereens. The Syrian Navy has been almost completely destroyed. These images are from the Al-Bada port, where Israel has sunk over 15 Syrian warships at a time when Syria, technically, is not even at war with Israel. Unable to contain his joy at the dramatic turn of events, the beleaguered Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, standing atop the Syrian-captured territory of the Golan Heights, claimed credit for the fall of the Assad government in Syria. And unilaterally even declared that the Separation of Forces Agreement of 1973, that had kept peace between the two nations for over 50 years, has now collapsed.
This collapse is a direct result of our forceful action against Hezbollah and Iran, Assad's main supporters. It set off a chain reaction of all those who want to free themselves from this tyranny and its suppression. But it also means we have to take action against possible threats. One of them is the collapse of the Separation of Forces Agreement from 1974 between Israel and Syria. This agreement held for 50 years. Last night it collapsed. The Syrian army abandoned its positions. We gave the Israeli army the order to take over these positions to ensure that no hostile force embeds itself right next to the border of Israel. This is a temporary defensive position until a suitable arrangement is found.
Rebels led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, who are now in power in Damascus, haven't lifted even a finger to stop the advance of the Israeli army inside the Syrian territory. Nor have they tried to protect Syria's defense infrastructure from the wanton destruction that it has been subjected to by the Israeli bombardment. For the Americans, the ouster of Assad is a fulfillment of a dream. This was the then American President Barack Obama, a democratically elected leader, telling the leader of another nation that he must go.
I think that Assad is going to have to leave in order for the country to stop the bloodletting and for all the parties involved to be able to move forward in a non-sectarian way.
The United States maintains anywhere from 900 to 2,000 troops in Syria. In 2019, Donald Trump spilled the beans on why the United States was in Syria and what Washington gains out of it. The American forces are in Syria to siphon off the Syrian oil, with the Syrian people getting no benefit out of it. In the case of Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Turkey's president, the fall of Damascus has proven to be a hollow victory.
Our greatest wish is for Syria's territorial integrity and national unity to be preserved, and for the instability that has been going on for 13 years to end with consensus in line with the legitimate demands of the Syrian people.
By backing Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, Erdogan wanted to weaken Assad. But the downfall of Assad and the weakening of Damascus has meant that the Kurdish rebels in the northwest of Syria will attain greater autonomy. And Kurdish separatism is Erdogan's problem to solve. No one at this moment can predict what the future of Syria will look like. In 1982, an Israeli journalist, Vodou Yanon, had once famously said, "Every Arab conflict is in Israel's interest." The fall of Damascus has weakened the hand of Iran and Russia. For the Americans, this is another successful regime change experiment, while for Erdogan, who on occasions has flirted with the idea of resuscitating the Ottoman Caliphate, the Balkanization of Syria may prove to be a self-goal.
The Afghan Taliban's Minister for Refugees and Repatriation, Khalil Haqqani, was killed in a suicide bombing at the ministry's office in the Afghan capital Kabul on the 11th of December. Khalil Haqqani is the highest-ranked member of the Taliban government to be killed in an attack since the Taliban stormed back to power in Kabul in August 2021. At least 5 other people were also killed in the Wednesday afternoon suicide bombing that's been claimed by the Islamic State Khorasan, the regional affiliate of the Islamic State group. Though the overall security situation in Afghanistan has improved since Taliban's ascension to power, dozens of bombings and suicide attacks are reported in the country every single year. So why has the Taliban so far failed in putting a lid on the terror attacks by the ISIS Khorasan terror network? Our next report gets you the details.
It was a somber Thursday in eastern Afghanistan's Paktia province as thousands of people attended the funeral of Khalil Haqqani, cabinet minister for refugees and repatriation. The coffin, draped in the Taliban flag, was guarded by the armed men. As loudspeakers broadcast summons and eulogies, local and international media were in attendance covering the funeral in Garda Serai district in Paktia. High-ranking officials who attended the funeral included Foreign Minister Amir Khan Muttaqi and Deputy Prime Minister Abdul Kabir. Khalil Haqqani was a senior leader of the Haqqani network, a powerful faction in the Taliban blamed for major attacks during the 20-year war. He became a minister in the Taliban's government after US-led NATO forces withdrew from Afghanistan in 2021. The United States Treasury had designated Khalil Haqqani as a global terrorist in 2011, and the US State Department offered a bounty of $5 million for information leading to his arrest. He was the uncle of Sirajuddin Haqqani, the acting interior minister who led the mourners in prayer on Thursday.
The person who carried out this weak action, I wish he thought that Khalil was an enemy of the infidels. The Americans offered a $5 million reward for information on him. He was not an enemy of Muslims. How can you call this a great victory that you martyred a Muslim and are proud of it? I wish you had done a great action against the infidels in the infidel world, then the Muslims would be proud of you.
Reportedly, the suicide bomber who detonated an explosive vest inside the ministry was able to gain access despite setting off an alarm on the body scanner because he told the guard he had metal plates in his body. He also claimed to be a refugee. Khalil Haqqani had a reputation of always making time for the refugees and people with disabilities. The United Nations mission in Afghanistan condemned the military attack and offered condolences to the victims' families. Though violence has waned in Afghanistan since the Taliban forces took over the country in August 2021, the regional chapter of the Islamic State known as Islamic State Khorasan province, a major rival of the Taliban, is active in Afghanistan and has carried out bombings, mostly targeting minority Shiite Muslims, especially in the capital. How will the Taliban respond to this attack by its rival on the highest-ranked member of its government will be interesting to watch.
The Caribbean nation of Haiti was jolted by a brutal weekend massacre in which at least about 184 people were killed on suspicion of practicing voodoo to cause harm to a gang leader's young child. It was yet another act of extreme violence by powerful criminal gangs that control nearly about 85% of the Haitian capital Port-au-Prince. According to the United Nations, the latest wave of killings bring the death toll in Haiti to nearly about 5,000 people this year. Brought to Haiti by the African slaves, voodoo is considered a mainstay of the country's culture. Banned during the French colonial rule, it only gained recognition as an official religion by the Haitian government in 2003. Our next report gets you more details.
Cité Soleil is a densely populated slum by the port of the Haitian capital, Port-au-Prince. Notorious for being among the most violent areas in the country, it is also counted among its most poorest. More than 180 predominantly elderly residents of the capital's western coastal neighborhood were massacred over the weekend, following the order of Wharf Jeremy gang leader Monel Mikeno Felix. Reportedly, Felix ordered the violence after his son fell ill and he sought advice from a Vodou priest, who blamed the elderly people in the area of harming the child through witchcraft. Felix's son had died on Saturday afternoon. Reportedly, mutilated bodies were set ablaze in the streets, including several young individuals who were killed attempting to save the elderly residents. On Monday, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres condemned gang violence and loss of life in Haiti, his spokesperson reported.
The Secretary General strongly condemns the continued gang violence and the loss of life in Haiti, where an armed gang is reported to have killed at least 184 people, including 127 elderly men and women, between the 6th and the 8th of December in the Wharf Jeremy neighborhood in Cité Soleil in the capital Port-au-Prince. The Secretary General expresses his deepest sympathy and condolences to the families of the victims of this horrific act. The Secretary General calls on the Haitian authorities to conduct a thorough investigation and ensure that perpetrators to these and all other human rights abuses and violations are brought to justice. The Secretary General reiterates once again his pressing call to member states to provide the multinational security support mission the financial and the logistical support required to successfully assist the Haitian National Police in addressing gang violence. He also calls on all Haitian stakeholders to accelerate progress in the political transition.
Dubbing the bloody episode an act of barbarity, of unbearable cruelty, the Office of Prime Minister Alex Didier-Fils-Abe said that the monstrous crime constitutes a direct attack on humanity. The mood on the streets of the capital was a mix of defiance, frustration, and anger. Residents of the capital, increasingly exasperated with the gang violence, did not want forgiveness for the gangs.
Today we heard that Mikano from Wharf Jeremy gang killed more than 100 people because his kid is sick and he said that it's because of witches. Today, even a man like the Prime Minister can't stop them. The gang killed more than 100 people. It's criminal. Your son is sick, you are a gang leader, you blame the illness on witches and you kill more than 100 people. It's hell, nothing more. The police should have immediately secured the area to arrest that criminal. And now the gang asks for forgiveness. What forgiveness for gangs in society? We don't accept that. We are kind. I don't have a gun. I educate my kids. I have one who graduated.
Despite a United Nations-backed Kenyan-led international force that has been deployed to help the outgunned Haitian police, violence has continued to soar. More than 700,000 people are internally displaced in Haiti, half of whom are children. In addition to this, 5,000 more have been forced from their homes by the weekend massacre. Not that a reminder was needed, but the latest massacre proves yet again that an impoverished nation of more than 11 million people has been taken hostage by an estimated 7 major gang coalitions and is struggling to break free.
The 20-month-long civil war in Sudan between the Sudanese National Army and its former ally, the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, has intensified in recent weeks. On the 9th of December, more than 100 people were killed in an army airstrike on a busy marketplace in the western Darfur region. The next day, the Rapid Support Forces fired some heavy artillery at an army-controlled sector of Omdurman. The state government controlled by the army has reported that at least about 65 people have been killed and hundreds wounded in this targeted attack. During the 20-month-long power struggle, both sides have been accused of committing abuses that are tantamount to war crimes. At a time when the ceasefire efforts have stalled and the world's attention is focused on crises elsewhere, the raging civil war in Sudan increasingly appears to be a forgotten one. Our next report gets more details.
Monday turned out to be one of the deadliest days of fighting in Sudan's 20-month-long civil war. More than 100 people were killed and hundreds others were wounded in a Sudanese army strike on a bustling market in the town of Kabul, about 180 kilometers west of North Darfur's capital, El Fasher. El Fasher is the only city still under military control in Darfur, though it has been under siege by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces since April. Reportedly, more than 8 barrel bombs hit Kabul town's market on its most active day. The human rights group, the Emergency Lawyers, described the bombing as a horrific massacre. The Sudanese army, in possession of fighter jets, denied responsibility for the attack and further insisted that it had the right to target any location used by the Rapid Support Forces for military purposes. The very next day, the Rapid Support Forces targeted an army-controlled sector of Omdurman, a city across the Nile from capital Khartoum that forms part of Sudan's wider capital. The state-aligned Khartoum governor, Ahmed Osman Hamza, while inspecting the targeted site and injured in the nearby Al-Nav hospital, claimed that at least 65 people had been killed and hundreds were wounded.
This targeting, instead of being directed at our heroes on the front lines, is aimed at these innocent civilians in their everyday lives. Whether on public transportation or in markets, this is an attack on the people, while wars should be fought on battlefields and with regular forces.
The rights group Emergency Lawyers also condemned the Rapid Support Forces for its indiscriminate shelling of Omdurman. It also condemned the powerful paramilitary for using civilian infrastructure, such as fuel stations, for military purposes. The Sudanese government, headed by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, has repeatedly accused the United Arab Emirates for fomenting conflict in the country by funneling arms to the paramilitaries from neighboring Chad in violation of the UN arms embargo. On Tuesday, Khartoum's governor, who attributed the dastardly attack to the terrorist militia, echoed the sentiment.
We say to the international community, these militias, despite being condemned in the Security Council and classified as terrorist militias, are still being supplied with weapons by certain countries. So we say to the international community, stop interfering with the people of Sudan, stop interfering with the simple Sudanese citizens, and halt the support for these rebellious militias.
The campaign group Human Rights Watch has appealed to the United Nations and the African Union to urgently deploy troops to Sudan to protect civilians. The war in Sudan, which broke out in mid-April last year before a planned transition to civilian rule, has extended for 20 months now with no end in sight. According to the United Nations, the bloody conflict has killed tens of thousands, pushed 11 million people from their homes, and unleashed the world's biggest hunger crisis. On Tuesday, the United Nations warned that almost 10,000 people a day are fleeing across the border to South Sudan, with daily arrivals having tripled in recent weeks. In a country which has experienced only brief democratic interludes, one of the worst humanitarian nightmares in recent history continues to worsen with each passing day.
And with that's a wrap on this edition of World at War. And if you want to reach out to me with any comments, feedback or questions, please feel free to do so on the ID that you're seeing on your screens. I'm your host, Mohammed Saleh, and I'll see you again next week.